All right, let's move on. Before we get into the markets, Nigeria Sovereign Investment Authority is set to open its portfolio with the injection of $525 million in projects under the Stabilization and Future Generations Fund. At the maiden briefing to signal its kickoff, CNBC Africa's Umu Ibrahim caught up with Uche Orji, the CEO of the Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority, to hear more on the allocations for the approved fund portfolios.
Sovereign wealth funds are not any other startup. Because you account to, in our case, 170 million people, one of the first challenges was obviously making sure you had processes. And one of the more challenging was, and the reason we had this event today was we just had our investment policy statements approved for the first two funds. The third one is still work in progress. Those are the things that take time. And it's been intense work. The board has met 3 times formally. The committees have met many times to get us to where we are today. So finally getting it off the ground is probably not the right terminology because we've been operational since last year. But part of being operational is actually getting things set up. And as you know, with most sovereign wealth funds, it's all about processes. But it's exciting, it really is.
It is still $1 billion in the funds. How much more do you expect to come in, and how is it likely to work with the ECA?
If the Act is implemented the way it's implemented, this will run into tens of billions of dollars within 10 years. Again, you are assuming many things. You're assuming that oil price stays high. You're assuming that production rates stay high. Those are many complex assumptions. So I will try and avoid projecting to you where I think the fund will go. All I know is that if the Act is implemented and if oil price stays high, then this could be a very, very fundamental fund. Most of these other funds started much smaller. Today we celebrate UAE. Then when they started in the mid-70s, they had very little money. The economy wasn't great. The UAE economy was struggling, but they started. Today they're north of $600 billion, by some of the publicly available estimates. I'm not sure what that number, I can't confirm or deny that number. All I know is that that is what's available out there as a number. The same thing with Norway. Norwegians started theirs in 1996 with $300 million seed funding. Today is a significant number, I think more than close to $700 billion, if not more. They receive $1 billion a week, is what has been published recently. The point here is $1 billion is not an inconsequential start, and people need to understand that. We're starting with more seed money than some other countries started at the beginning. But the future of a sovereign wealth fund is about consistent contribution. That is what makes a sovereign wealth fund. And I'm hoping that we'll continue to see the contribution to the endowment come in.
What sectors have you assessed opportunities?
Oh, a lot. I mean, we've been working incredibly hard at many sectors. And again, I'm not prepared to announce anything now. But we've looked at agriculture as a sector. I mean, you're talking about infrastructure fund, right? Because we have 3 funds. We have the Stabilization Fund, we have the Future Generation Fund, we have the Infrastructure Fund. The Stabilization Fund will invest in safe liquid instruments. The Future Generation Fund, because it's a savings fund with a slightly higher return target, will invest in a slightly, will be a diversified portfolio that will be 60% in listed securities and around 40% in unlisted securities. But our idea here is to drive a returns target that will create significant savings for Nigerian people over time.
What are your expectations in terms of investment returns?
Yeah, the objective here is to try and preserve the purchasing power of Nigerians in our intervention currency, which is in US dollars. Stabilization fund, the objective is capital preservation. So we'll earn money, but the key thing is to try and preserve capital, because don't forget that this is a fund that can be called upon to stabilize the economy in terms of economic stress. The Future Generation Fund, I can talk to you about looking at other people that have had savings funds in the past. Most of them have earned anywhere between 3% and 5%. Don't forget this is in US dollars, which is really a challenging thing to do these days. And we intend to be competitive with our peer group. The Infrastructure Fund, the Act defines it as commercial infrastructure. And we try very hard not to disclose our returns expectation. Not because we're trying to be opaque, but because you need to appreciate that we are in the middle of projects we're assessing. And so our number out there will in many ways affect some of our negotiations. So we are very careful not to disclose that. So for the infrastructure fund, the reality is it's a negotiation tool for us that we will not likely to put it out there, because if you're submitting a project to us, people will walk around that number. But the act made it clear we'll be earning commercial returns.
Now, just how excited can Nigerians get with regards to this latest development?
Very, very excited. Let's start with the fact that Sovereign Wealth Fund is a tool of fiscal discipline, okay? And the act that has set it up is here to emphasize and put a structure around how we conserve what you describe as excess revenue. And we will report our numbers. It will be transparent in terms of how we invest. We are here looking for the best deals for Nigerians. We will, in many ways, force a business model in places where people don't have a business model. We want to drive sustainability. We want to drive independence of decision making. We want to drive transparency. People should be excited about this because the benefits to other countries as well that have set this up is very high. I mentioned some numbers to you. Some countries started with $200 million are significantly higher. It is important that Nigerians support this because it is a very credible development across the financial services sector in Nigeria. Secondly, the reason why you should be excited is one of the mandates we intend to fulfill is to provide a co-investment vehicle. There are some people who want to invest in the country and they're looking for credible partners, co-investment partners, and we have been seen as, and some of the feedback I've received is that people are like, oh my God, you're what we've been waiting for. A public sector company with a private sector philosophy that I think attracts credible co-investment. I think this is really something we should all be very excited about.